Henry Mather to the Aquatic Life Podcast. How's it going, Henry?
Hey guys, I'm good. Thanks for inviting me. It's awesome to be here.
A clap,
Welcome.
round of applause.
All right.
Henry, yay.
Doing the wave.
Henry is
Welcome aboard, Henry.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Henry is not only a friend of the podcast, but a longtime friend of Dalton's, and I'd like to include myself in there. I've known Henry for a few years and Dalton even longer. So why don't we start off and talk about how Henry and Dalton, how you guys know each other?
We met through friends. Dave, right? Dave and Mickey?
Yeah. We were having, you guys were having dinner at Dive Bar. Yeah. It was totally the appropriate meeting. We met in a place called Dive Bar that is a dive bar that serves sushi and is surrounded by boats and dive boats. So
yeah, it was great to be amongst friends, and it was awesome. Lifelong friends with Dalton and Ramona. So
yeah. It was a good time, and we just hit it off instantly. And next thing you know, we were diving together and traveling together, and drinking together and barbecuing and, talking dive stories and photography.
Talking photos.
And to go back to that, so Dive Bar is based in South Florida.
Jupiter.
Yeah, Jupiter, Florida.
Jupiter, and that's where you're based currently, Henry, right nearby.
Just a little north of there called Hobe Sound. Beautiful little fishing village.
Speaking of beautiful little fishing village, you got a beautiful little resort village going on at your place, man. You've been crushing.
Thanks. It's a lot of work. When I can't dive during this COVID mess, I'm pouring a lot of that energy into the backyard and making an oasis, so I don't have to go any place really. I just sit in the backyard.
Hey, nothing wrong with that, man. Nothing wrong with that. It is. I wouldn't mind spending a few days sitting in your backyard. And
you're both welcome. Anytime we can have an aquatic life here in the backyard next to the Buddha.
I think we will definitely do that at some point.
You up on that
for sure.
As soon as flights are easy to do.
Oh,
it's
that again.
So why don't we give our loyal podcast listeners a little background on you, Henry? Tell us about how you got into diving and where you started off and how you also branched into underwater photography.
Well, I've been diving forever. I think a lot of people, me being around a pool, I was a swimmer all my life, swimmer in high school, swimmer in college, always around pools. And I think I grabbed somebody's tank at some time, my older brother maybe, with one of those old Aqualung BC regulators, and just did it without being actually trained, just learned off what my brother had been done. And then in high school, I did the, not the Boy Scout course, but there was a local community. Like I think I was a 4-H farmer, and they had it as well. But it was just something we could do as an activity in the quarries in Illinois. And then when I moved to Florida is when I really, really got into it. Being down here, it's just a heaven to do anything scuba diving related.
Gotta love the water in Florida, man.
And then, when I got out of college, when I could actually afford scuba diving and had a job, is when I paid for the money to become a dive master. And that's really when diving, the love of diving is just helping others and making sure that everybody's safe and everybody's corralled, because that's, as you know, the job of a dive master is really to be.
Well, let's rewind. Let's rewind for just a second, because I feel like you skipped over a major water part. Or you skimmed. You kind of like kickboarded by a major water part of your life. You were a high school swimmer, and you were a college swimmer, but you weren't just a college swimmer. You were a D1 college swimmer.
Yeah, I went to the University of Texas and the University of Alabama. Hook 'em horns and roll tide. And was a collegiate swimmer and swam the NCAAs and did quite well. Didn't really win anything, but you're already a winner at that stage, in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to swim for a D1 college, that's no joke right there.
It's your life. It really is your life.
And just an interesting story for the guys listening. Yeah, I knew Henry was a D1 swimmer, and I knew he was a very good swimmer. But we were in St. Thomas, and we were just out on a boat, hanging out, having some cocktails early in the morning. We weren't diving that day. We were just having a boat day. And we all kind of jumped in the water playing around. And Henry's like, I'm going to swim over to that island. And I'm like, okay, bud. And I turn around and say something to one of the guys on the boat and turn back around to look for Henry. and he's almost at the island. and this is a couple hundred yards away. It's not like it was, just 50 yards away. I'm talking like 2 football fields. He just like cooked it, and I was like, okay. And that is several years after college. That's not, so I can.
That wasn't too long ago. That was your wedding
like
weekend.
That's 3 years ago. I mean, so it wasn't that long ago, and it's you can always tell the difference in someone who's swam competitively. And so that had to be a huge part of your life. Do you have any, can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Well, I don't regret it. I absolutely love every part of it. I mean, I really didn't go to college for learning. I went for swimming and girls, to be honest. Right. Everything about swimming was great because the people I got to meet, the places I got to go, all over the world, being part of a large college system like that is just fantastic. It's not like a football where you're getting all the stuff. I think we got a Speedo and a pair of goggles. That's all we got for free. But it really teaches you a lot about how to work as a team, how to work together. Goal setting, visions, and making sure that you know how to attain things in life. I mean, that's basic any sport in general.
Yeah.
But at a D1 level, you get access to a lot of the sports psychology behind things. So it was great. And I realize now how blessed I truly was back then. At the time I was just, I'm here having fun, whatever. I'm a kid.
Well, we're all young and dumb in college. I mean,
right. Exactly.
That's right.
It pays off now, though, because like you said,
well, I'm sure the discipline pays off huge.
Yeah, the discipline, I think just my comfortability in water alone is a payoff. Because, people look at me and say, how come your buoyancy is so good? I said, I've had years and years and years of practice of that. Right. So,
yeah. And I think that's one of the things that we always tell, people on our podcast, and I tell students, and, as a dive master, you've told plenty of people on the boat, is that the biggest thing you can do is be comfortable in the water. That's going to extend your bottom time. It's going to ease any anxiety that you have. It's just going to make for an all-around better dive. Buoyancy control, everything.
Take away the
being
gadgets.
Comfortable in the water. Yeah. And so one of the...
Go ahead.
I was just saying that one of the big things we always say is that, before you pick up a camera, get comfortable in the water. Be good at your buoyancy and just be comfortable in the water. And then you start adding all the gear and gadgets.
Right. My instructor, Richard Rydell, he is passed, but he was one of the most amazing influences on my life, scuba diving wise. I think the first time I brought a little point and shoot to one of my lessons with him, he slapped it out of my hands. He goes, none of that until you get your dive master, until you prove to me that you can take care of stuff around and the things that I need, you're not going to hold anything in your hand.
Nice.
It's getting rid of the gadgets. And that's hard sometimes for people. They want to record that. I think in some ways that's a bridge in how I got interested in underwater photography is that a lot of times I would gather up those electronic gadgets that they would want to, little point and shoots and little cameras that they would bring. And I'd say, you're not going to need those. You're going to be focusing on the skills today. Yeah. And what I'll have it in my pocket. If you want to take a picture, I'll hand it to you, or I'll take a picture for you. Yeah. And a lot of them like the pictures I took. So I think that's just a natural bridge into getting a bigger camera and having this be a more expensive mistress.
Yeah, and it definitely becomes an addiction, doesn't it? Not just the scuba gear, but the photo gear. You get, it kind of.
We're all early adopters here, so you know what it is like. So anything that comes out, you're going to want, oh, that's cool. That new Shearwater Petrus. Ooh, I want that one, man. So absolutely. But,
acquisition syndrome, man.
As a dive master, it was one of the best things for me. I've heard you say it on some of the other podcasts that I've listened to. You've got to learn the skills. You've got to be comfortable to know not just where your gear is, but where your gear is while you're focusing on something else. It has to be a blind location. Situational awareness is huge in scuba diving. I try to teach that to anybody I come across, that you should know exactly where your dump valves are. You should know exactly how to retrim yourself if you're not. Because then, one of the experiences I had when I was in Roatan, I was diving, doing some scuba diving and some shooting and some, just regular stuff. and all of a sudden the camera comes floating down from above. You know, somebody had gotten panicked. They lost complete situational awareness and just dumped whatever gear they had just to get to the surface. So I had to bring that back up, and you know, things like
Finders
that happen.
keepers, right?
Yeah. Well, unfortunately, it was my girlfriend's, and I had to give it back. So.
Yeah, okay.
Well, you were in the right place at the right time for that, then, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I'm sure it paid off in the end.
Yeah.
So when you got certified, did you go from just your open water course, advanced, and then take a little bit of time, or did you just like plow all the way through to dive master in like 6 months?
Well, I did open water and advance and nitrox right off the bat. And I think then it was probably another 2 or 3 years later just to become comfortable. I mean, I fish to water is basically kind of what I am anyway. So
Right.
It wasn't long before I realized that, hey, you know, I might want to make a profession out of this. I didn't go all the way to instructor, but, you know, I think dive master was perfect for me.
Yeah.
You know, it's a cooler title actually than instructor, because you can cross your arms and say, I'm a dive master.
Sounds a little more important, doesn't it?
Master.
Yeah, it really does.
You have
A
the
dive
master.
Yeah. So when you got into photography aspect of it, did you start with, you know, the point and shoots that the people were handing you, or did you get your own point and shoot? Did you jump all the way to DSLR, you know, Sea Life?
I think I kept a couple of times on dives when I had their point and shoots. I realized, hey, I should get something that this is fun, because I liked kind of communicating and meeting people. This is, I started a scuba club called Secret Society of the Frog. And in doing that, just kept meeting people, and through the camera, basically, I would say, hey, I got some great shots of you. Give me your email address. And at the same time, I would tell them about our scuba club, and just kind of build membership that way.
Nice.
I did start. I think my very first camera with a housing was one of those thin Sony point and shoots that had the sliding front. I can't remember the model number, but it took really good shots. It had a Leica lens or something tiny in there,
Right.
And it just had a little compression housing. And it was super simple to use, and it took great shots. The only thing it wouldn't do is it had that delay. That's really what frustrated me.
Yes.
Was I wanted to get that shot of something really quick. And unlike the DSLR that we have now, where you can just pop a bunch of shots off and it's almost immediate. It is immediate.
Yeah.
That Sony, that's the thing that frustrated me. I said, you know, I want to do better. I want to improve on this. And the competitive nature in me, just to make myself better, is what pushed me to go and open the door to investing in a DSLR and a good housing.
Yeah, I think it was a similar situation with Todd and myself. We had an SP350 is what we started with underwater, made by Olympus. And it was that lag you'd push, and then you're like waiting half a second for it to actually take the photo.
Right.
So you're kind of like, okay.
So frustrating.
Yeah, shutter lag's a bitch. What can you say?
Yeah,
exactly.
But it was a good place to start, and once you got some photos, it just started the desire, right, to improve and get better. And you knew something was there, and you could do it.
And I think also the excitement of pairing it with post-production, anything. Mm-hmm. I didn't know Lightroom at the time. I was just kind of, I don't remember the software I used at first, but just kind of, you know, getting the green or the yellow out of the shot, because there wasn't a lot of light behind that camera, was fun. I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So that's kind of cool. Cause I work in computers. That's the 9-to-5 job that pays for all this fun. So combining it with software afterwards to say, okay, listen, I can tweak this and kind of make it look exactly like I thought here in my eye or in my head. That was the next evolutionary step for me. That was a great part. I loved it.
Awesome. Yeah, there's something to be said about being able to combine your passions, you know, of technology and photography and diving. And it's like you get the best of all worlds. You get to be creative, you get to be technical, and you just get to hang out in the water and do something fun.
Yeah, I think the biggest step for me, where it all kind of started gelling, I got Alex Mustard's book that was entitled, I think, like the Encyclopedia of Underwater Photography. Mm-hmm. And it really broke down everything that I was not understanding, because it did the camera side of things, all the technical settings, the f-stop and all the shutter speeds and what that's going to do underwater. It talks about the focal length and everything like that, but really how to approach your subjects, how to get that shot, how to position it, how to do the advanced thinking before your dive, just like you would do with a dive master or an instructor. When you do your dive profile, you have to have a photography profile too, to say, okay, what am I looking for? What shots am I looking for? And how can I put myself in that position? So that book really opened me up to a lot of different ways to do the photography, but I needed better equipment. So there, I talked to some friends at Reef Photo right here. It's great having them right in Pompano Beach area, and stopped in and said, hey, here's my budget to start with. What can I get? And I'm shooting at the time, I think, the Nikon D7000, which is a great cropped lens camera. And so they were talking about all these housings and everything. And I'm like, well, do I want, the Ike lights that have the plasticky or the clear housings, or do I want to get something metal and more robust that's a much more expensive housing? And I opted for the metal just because of the enclosure. And I'm kind of a bull in a china shop. If I drop something, I want it to survive. So.
Yeah.
And so which housing did you end up with? Nauticam or?
I ended up with the Nauticam. Yeah, the Nauticam D7000 at the time. That also, fortunately, when I upgraded to the 7200, accepted that same camera. So that was fortunate, because that's not always the case.
Right.
And then only about, I think, a year or two ago, I upgraded to the D500, still a cropped lens. I do like that lens. I think I talked to both of you about possibly upgrading to the full sensor, or the full size. Yeah. Possibly like what you shoot, Dalton, at 850. Mm-hmm. And because of the glass that I had already invested in, it was a better decision for me to stay at the 500.
I think that's what a lot of people forget about or don't think about. They hear full frame and they instantly think, well, that's what the pros shoot with. That's what I have to shoot with.
Right.
And it's kind of true. Well, it's kind of true. That's what the pros shoot with. But as a professional photographer, I've shot with the D500 and the D850 and a D810 and a D5 all at the same time. Shooting sports, I would have one hanging off one side, one hanging off the other side. I'd be using one with the 400 millimeter lens on it, and I'm switching between all of them.
Right.
So it really doesn't matter. You just have to realize what benefits you get from each one. Like for a crop sensor, if you're shooting macro stuff, that crop sensor is going to be a huge advantage.
Huge help.
And
very good help.
And if you have a fisheye lens, the wide angle doesn't matter as much. Having,
right.
it used to be, right. Well, if I have a standard wide angle lens and, oh my gosh, I'm shooting at 14 millimeter and I think that's fine, but underwater in a crop sensor, it's not wide enough, right? Well, right. With a fisheye and your crop sensor, you don't have to worry about it. You don't have to have a whole new camera. And so that's kind of the thing we had talked about when you're making that decision.
And just understanding the dynamics of a fisheye underwater and how it's not as as bulbous as a fisheye is out of water. It actually brings it back into.
And just because sea life and reef life, when the human eye looks at it, the distortion isn't perceived nearly as much as it is if you're taking a topside photo with the fisheye. So all that stuff combined, and just for the fact in recent years, compared to when we first got started, the availability of different types of lenses, however many fisheyes there are and ultra wide angles, there's a lot more nowadays than there used to be. So back in the day, there was like one lens to have, and it made sense to have a full frame. Nowadays, those issues are gone, which is great.
And that was a real problem for me to decide in my head. I'd said those exact words. I want to be a professional. I need to shoot a professional camera, but the 500 is a professional camera, maybe semi-pro in some people's mind. It really took a lot of talking to my friends, you guys, to determine, hey, I'm going to be fine with that. I don't have to reinvest in all my glass, and I will shoot just as good, if not better pictures, because, I'm comfortable with that view, that cropped view.
Yeah, exactly. And, just on the only people that will tell you that is not a professional camera is someone who is not a professional. If you talk to any pro photographer, they'll tell you, I'll tell you the same thing, that any pro photographer worth their salt will tell you. It doesn't matter what camera you hand me, I'm going to take a good photo.
Right. Point and shoot.
It just doesn't matter because I understand light and how things work.
Right.
But people that are going to say, "Oh, well, that D500, that's not a pro camera." That's someone who doesn't know any better. That's someone who's still learning.
Yep,
So
very true.
So yeah.
Very true.
And so you, once you got started with your Nauticam housing, did you first take it somewhere locally? Did you do a shore dive, or was it in preparation for a big trip you were about to take that you?
Wow, that's a good question. I bought it. No, I bought it in anticipation of going to Indonesia, and that was like 2 years out because I knew I needed time. I needed time to get to know all the buttons and dials. I mean, the inside of that housing looks like a German clockmaker made. Right. It's all the little things. So I was really kind of intimidated at first, and I watched a lot of YouTube videos on just the setup of that. I made sure that my camera was set to go, not just in it, but to make sure it could take advantage of all the settings in an underwater setting. There's several things on all those DSLRs that need to be set different so that the back focus is one, because if you don't want it, I don't want anyways to be able to pull the trigger to take a shot and have it refocus. I want to focus on something, stay level on my buoyancy, and then just kind of follow that whatever I'm shooting and pop off the shot when I need it. I don't want to have to worry about it refocusing on the trigger. That's a big one right there.
Completely understand that.
But I think my first dive might have been Blue Heron Bridge, to be honest. It's just I wanted to take it out as soon as possible. That's the thing I love about living in this part of the country. We've got Coral Cove, and we've got the bass and stuff right up here that are all within maybe a 15 to 30 minute drive away. That it doesn't matter if it's pouring down rain. It doesn't matter if there's 5 to 10 foot seas out in the ocean. I'm in these self-contained little beautiful places that I can just go and still get, my love truly is macro. I love the big creatures and all that, but to see the macros and the little things and to just, follow them around is great.
To be fair, Henry, I do remember one dive at Blue Heron you and I went to do after a hurricane came through.
That's true. We didn't necessarily make it in because literally...
Well, we made it in, but we turned around and got right back out. You couldn't see. You could put your hand on the front of your port and not see it.
I couldn't see anything in the front of my mast that close.
Yeah, I couldn't
I don't know what hurricane that was, but it was 2 days after the hurricane, or 1 day after the hurricane left. We wanted to go out, and so we went to Blue Heron Bridge, and it was just a disaster.
So that's a good thing. Henry is I believe, our first official South Florida resident guest on the podcast. Blue Heron Bridge is pretty nationally known, but just in case people don't know what Blue Heron Bridge is, can you explain to us what is it like? Why is it so famous, and what is the experience like?
Blue Heron Bridge is really kind of a great resource for it. Most people just call it a shore dive, but it's part of the national park system. It's Phil Foster State Park. It basically is a parking lot under a bridge that has water on both sides.
And it's in the middle of the Intercoastal Waterway.
Yeah, in the middle of an Intercoastal Waterway. And it's down close to kind of West Palm Beach, Riviera Beach area of Florida. It just has a tremendous following. It's its own microcosm as far as scuba diving is concerned. On any particular day, it is very impacted by the tidal flows. So because
it's right next to the inlet as well.
It's right next to the inlet of West Palm Beach. So the tides come in and out of there, they're ripping. That probably anywhere on the low side of maybe 2 to 3 knots up to 5 knots. And it can be a big tidal flow of anywhere from a foot to 3 feet. So when you're on the slack tide, so everybody's checking. There's lots of websites out. You can actually go and check these. Divers will just converge on this, and it doesn't matter the time of day. It can be 6 o'clock in the morning. It can be 6 or 7 at night. It does close at dusk, so you can't really do a night dive without special permission. Or if you have a boat or on a dive boat, they can take you there too. But it's just a fantastic place. It has a snorkel trail, so it's good for snorkelers. And there's good and bad with all dive sites. Like sometimes on weekends, there's a ton of the new divers and instructors there. So you have a lot of people finning kicked down, so it's getting all silty. But on weekdays when I try to go during the day, it's just gorgeous because you've got, gosh, I couldn't even imagine how many acres do you think that is, Dalton? Maybe 30?
Yeah, underwater.
I mean, it's a lot of park.
Yeah.
That you can go out and even if you stuck your hand in the dirt, you're probably only going to get to 15 to 17 feet in the deepest portions. Most of it's probably only under 10.
20 is the deepest you'll hit.
Yeah.
Because I would do checkout dives there, and you have to do to qualify as a dive. It has to be 20 feet for 20 minutes minimum. So you can shove your hand down to your watch in the sand and get to 20 feet.
But they've got a lot of stuff there, Todd. That is, you know, they've got shopping carts and they've got statues out there for local artists that have put some like 3 different types of sharks. They got a hammerhead and some other things.
Yep.
The snorkel trail has a whole bunch of artificial reefs that they've constructed out of concrete, and it's designed to, you know, make the fish come in and make little homes for them. There's just so much to offer all different kinds of swimmers, snorkelers, divers, whatever you want. But I think the best part is that it's such a rich nutrient environment that you have nudibranchs. You got the small stuff. I mean, on some days that I've been there, I've seen more than 30 octopus, and they're all, you know, inside little holes or inside shells or coming out of a bottle that was thrown out of a boat or something. Just an amazing place, but truly like muck diving at its best at sometimes, because they have frogfish. There's a whole family of seahorses. It really is tremendous. If you're in a position to come and you want a backup dive, which in case your dive boat doesn't go out because of bad weather, come down here to South Florida, because Blue Heron Bridge and some of the other local sites are also very good because you can have bad weather and still go diving.
Yeah, it's the muck diving capital of North America, pretty much. It's got so many great critters. If you're like Henry and you want to take pictures of critters, octopuses, blennies, and little coral heads, and frogfish are hard to find, but there you have a good chance of seeing one. Seahorses, like you said. And it's a short dive, and it's right off a parking lot, so it's about as easy as it gets. You just have to time the tide, but it has some of the most amazing macro life anywhere that you can find, all in one small area. It's pretty much as good as it gets in North America here, and it just happens to be down the street from where Henry lives.
Yeah, and from a training aspect, if you're new equipment or you have a new camera, you want to try something out, the fact that you're out there in kind of battling a current is really good if you're going to be on a liveaboard later, or you're going on a nice long trip you've invested in and you want to get some good photos. Blue Heron Bridge is the perfect place to kind of test all that together so that you can get your stuff together and make sure you get a good shot.
Yeah, and I mean, it even has on the western side of the park there, where you have the cut through for the boats and stuff that come through. Right. You've got like a little mini wall on the inside there, where you get plenty of lobsters and shrimp and things like that, arrow crabs. And I've seen like mantis shrimp there.
Oh yeah, I mean I've seen so many
sharks,
crazy things.
All kinds of,
some days you're looking at macro stuff. I know I particularly remember a story. I was looking and shooting a jawfish. I think I submitted that photo for this picture. The jawfish is, once every 30 days, usually on the full moon, it's going to be aerating. The male is going to be aerating its eggs. It's a great shot. And you're just sitting there camped out waiting for the guy to have enough nerve to come up and actually toss the ball of eggs. If you can get that shot, it'd be a winner. Yeah, that's it right there. But I'm sitting there trying to get this shot, and then I see or feel this shadow go over my head, and it was a devil ray. It's the weirdest thing. Sometimes you'll get manatees. Sometimes you'll get. I've even seen people show that there's manta rays there, but just had this big devil ray come over top of me, and it was incredible while I'm trying to shoot this wonderful little creature with trying to aerate all his little babies.
And for our listeners, they can't see the image unless they're watching us on YouTube or looking at the show notes.
So the disclaimer here is if you guys are listening on the podcast, if you use the Overcast podcast players, you'll be able to see this as chapter art. If not, if you happen to be using any other podcast players, just check our show notes. We'll have pictures for any of the photos we referenced of Henry's on here. You can check the show notes or head over to YouTube and it should be up there as well. All right, back to regularly scheduled clothing. Yes,
so professional. Wow.
So this shellfish has what looks to be thousands, but we'll say hundreds of babies that it. Tell us about how jawfish, as they have their eggs and their embryos and what they do, the behavior. Maybe not everyone has seen it.
This is a big banded jawfish. So the size of this guy is probably, his head's maybe the size of a golf ball and his body's maybe the size of 3 or 4 inches below that. I don't think I've seen them outside of they stay in little holes. They make these little abodes and you see them a lot of times when when they don't have the babies, they are digging down in and they come up and they spit the sediment out as they're trying to clear the home for whenever the babies arrive. And they're the funniest little things because they're full of personality. A lot of times they'll swivel and their heads will just kind of follow you wherever you go. They're like a tracking device. So wherever you happen to be, and they're almost the perfect picture taker because they kind of want to engage with you. So if you're really patient,
cool.
and one of the things I learned from Alex Mustard's book was the fact that, fish are very repetitive. Everything marine is very repetitive. If you miss that one shot, just be patient, hang around. It'll probably happen again. I think that's one of the frustrating things when you dive with a underwater photographer. You spend a lot of time sitting in one place when people want to move around and see stuff. When we're wanting to camp out and just, what is that? I want to see it again,
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things that I've told a lot of people that don't dive or new divers. I'm like, yeah, I can drop in on a coral head and I can spend a whole 45-minute or hour dive just on that coral head. I mean, right. I won't go anywhere else. And they're like, why are you spending so much? You were there when we left. What are you looking at? I'm like, well, I'm looking at blennies or jawfish or arrow crabs or paraclemines shrimp. Try to say that 3 times real fast.
Nice.
I can't say that one time fast, much less 3.
Right. But there's so much to see if you just take your time and look.
Right.
And it's just again, all so beautiful and colorful.
Talking about Blue Heron Bridge, there's just so much to see, and I'm so fortunate. We're all
seahorses
to have it here. Yeah, seahorses. I don't try to spend too much time on them because I know that the light bothers them at sometimes. So I just take a few shots here and there and then come back. There are quite a few spots, and the dive community is very secretive but very supportive in that. We don't really want to give up the spots unless we know who you are. We know what you're capable of. So there's special Facebook groups. There's all sorts of fun ways to communicate that. A lot of times we'll be very secretive, especially with seahorses, because unfortunately, one of the bad parts about Blue Heron Bridge is the fact that you do have poachers coming for, various regions, calling research, whatever it is, and they come and they steal a lot of the aquatic life that is beautiful there, and it's sad.
Henry, didn't they have a big thing about that a couple of years ago?
Yeah,
where
even more recently there was something news about.
It's only been about a year, I think, year and a half. That and Jim Abernathy, one of the local guys that does a dive boat and does a lot of research. They had I think it was the University of Texas or Arlington or something, aquatic research and aquarium, had sent a big truck with about 4 divers, and they were just going in there and pulling everything out over like a 6-day period. And so we all the dive community got up in arms, and we actually got legislation to make it a preserved site. So unless they have like really good connections or they get a very expensive written notice that they could do that basically that's been stopped, and it's nice. But there's still a lot of people that come at night and just take stuff, and they're not related to anybody. Yeah. It's sad.
Yeah, that's unfortunate. It's one of the big things. Another thing we always try to push, not just on the podcast, but even when we're out on dive boats, just don't take anything but don't take anything but pictures. I can't talk today. So don't take anything but pictures and
Yeah.
leave nothing but bubbles.
It is Thursday, Dalton. Does that mean you started
It is.
drinking early?
It is. I didn't tell you guys what was in my little magic cup today.
That's right.
Okay.
So Blue Heron Bridge is very famous in South Florida. I know the next thing that comes to mind for me is the Florida Keys. Have you dove the Keys quite a bit?
Yeah, as a dive master, I think my dive total, I don't know. I probably have somewhere over 2,000, 2,500 dives, but a lot of those are in the Florida Keys. My instructor had a friend that owned the Jules Verne Undersea Park, and we did a lot of our training there. So just about every weekend I was in the Keys with Richard. And if those of you who don't know the Jules Verne Undersea Park, it's basically the end of the canal, and it's got about visibility about that far.
And the water's cold.
Yeah, the water's very cold. It's where the Underwater Sea Hotel is. Yeah. But I did a lot of my tech training there too, because I went out and got IANDT training, technical 2 for like a couple 300-foot dives. And then I quit because it's too expensive, too much gear, and there's not enough people doing it that I just stopped. So.
And all your sea life is really, you know, between 40 and,
if you want to see beautiful blue water or some cool wrecks, I will say that the wrecks were cool. But it really, my focus was, and the cold water diving too. My focus is warm water diving, Caribbean diving.
Amen.
I think we're all on the same page there.
Yeah, I love the Keys though. You know, the Keys is actually where I discovered nudibranchs for the first time because the water's so much warmer. And I think it was the city of Washington that I was on a dive, and I saw this little fluttering, looked like a piece of ribbon with things sticking out of it. And I went up top to the surface on the surface interval, and I said, "What was that thing?" And I asked one of the dive masters on the boat, and she was like, "Well, that's a nudibranch. It's a Grand Florida or something," she called it. I couldn't remember what it was, but I was like, "What is that stuff?" And she goes, "Well, it breathes out its butt." I'm like, "Really?" Because yeah, that's nudibranch. Naked gill is, I think it's Greek, right? So it's they breathe out their butt, and then they've got the rhizosomes or rhizopheres or whatever they got to taste the water in front of them, whether it's friend or foe.
Well, I know you've got a really good nudibranch shot that you sent over to us to show off today.
They are totally my passion. I could take pictures of nudibranchs every day, all day, because there's just so many of them. Yeah, this was in the Komodo Sea in Indonesia, in a probably, I want to say about maybe 10 or 15 foot of water, a lot of surge, and this guy was just munching on some of the green life around it. He came up over this I think that was a shell. No, it may have been a
looks like a sea
mollusk
fan
or something.
Or...
Yeah, sea fan. And he got in several positions that were really cool, and the colors on him were so amazing. The
detail you captured is stunning.
And this I think was with my 105. I hadn't purchased the 60 millimeter lens yet, so I was shooting the 105 macro on the crop lens, which it gives me like 126 or something. But it really
closer to 150, I think.
Yeah, 150. The bad part is that the focal length is, the depth of field is such a sliver that you really only get the front. But I loved the color, the little polka dots. It was so 70s, and the color scheme on them, and then those rhizosomes. I didn't realize they had little layers so that the surface area of them is quadrupled in essence to get more water past them.
Yeah, every time that I've seen something like this, it's a lot of times you don't get the detail of the rhizosomes that you can actually see that they're individual little pieces on there.
Right.
Just a lot of times you just see it as one little thing sticking out of the top. But on this image, it's just great detail, and you can see the individual layers.
Just tons of great detail on the rhinophores and on his body. Just all the white circular spots all throughout. It's just
that's it.
Beautiful.
And thanks, Todd.
Yeah, and it's great.
I couldn't come up with the word.
Todd knows what it is today.
Yeah, you spent enough time taking pictures of nudies, rhinophores, and the gills in the back.
The color scheme.
Yeah. And the gills on the back
goes all the way up
plume or something like that.
Oh, cool. Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
there's still so much
this
to
is
learn.
just an amazing shot. Again, have a look in our show notes. It's just a beautiful animal taken in a beautiful manner. So this is definitely a wonderful shot, Henry. Great job.
Sure. And this is with the D7000 or 7200?
I think at the time that was probably the 7200.
Okay.
On
Nice.
with a 105 macro lens.
Yeah.
Nice. Very nice.
Nicely done.
And not, and the port, everything goes with everything.
Yes.
So it's not new lens, new port.
New ports. Yeah.
That's how it goes.
Usually new camera, new lens, new port, new housing.
It's been a great learning curve though. I have not, it's very frustrating at times. I still consider myself just a newbie amateur, but I get good shots. I take a lot to heart of what a lot that I've read, and I've seen a lot of pictures is, that picture in particular, I literally was, as low as I could go. Cause I see too many people take pictures from the top down. Oh, there's another top of a seahorse. There's another fish butt, whatever it may be. You really need to take time and find out what your angle is. And you've got to be below that subject to get the picture that you want. And I wanted to see those antlers. I'm calling them antlers because I can't think of the word again.
None of us are scientists or marine biologists here.
Right? Sorry, guys. I am not a marine biologist. You've had a lot of them on the show. Now you're going to get me.
That's right. Heretofore known as antlers for the rest of this podcast.
Right.
Exactly.
So I wanted to have the antlers above and have some blackness behind them. And there's a couple shots I don't know. I don't think I submitted, but there's a couple shots that actually shows the mouth feeding on some of the food. And I didn't realize they even had a mouth that projected out, which was really cool. So and then, the whole community, when I post it on the nudibranch hunters and things like that, there's so many marine biologists out there. They tell you the genus and the phylum and everything, and they get so specific. So it's such this great learning experience, and I love it as well. It's the back end side of the photography.
Nice. You said that was in Komodo in Indonesia.
Yeah. Komodo.
So how did you
remember the beach, but
how did you like diving in Indonesia?
Unbelievable. I was set to go back in November and take my girlfriend with me this time, but unfortunately our flights just got canceled and we can't, Singapore Airlines is not letting people fly from the States except for LAX, but we'll go back in 2021. Probably we're going to do the same trip. I love Indonesia. It's, to me, you really can tell. Now, I've been out in the Keys diving. I've been here in Florida diving for the last almost 30 years. And I've really seen a decline in what's happening. And I know that, climate change is a big hot topic, but when you're a diver, you see it. You see it firsthand. It's devastating. It's getting worse exponentially. Unfortunately, Indonesia is one of those places that I'm almost scared to tell people to go to because we as humans like to just go and destroy. It's just kind of our MO. And I don't mean that as a bad thing. People don't take it as a trigger, but it is something we do, and we do it really well. So, but Indonesia is one of those places. It's kind of going back to the the 70s and 80s in Florida. Everything is so lush and beautiful, and the water is so crystal clear. Again, it has trouble in some areas, but like Raja Ampat, which I've been, the Banda Sea, Komodo National Forest, those places are just amazing. The things you see there are just tremendous. And I tried to take as much as I could. I just, didn't have all the time and the money in the world to stay there.
Right. The life goals, right?
Right. Exactly.
So one of your, actually taking it back to the Keys, because that's before I got you off on the tangent, before I get into Henry, is your turtle picture with the wreck in the background actually in the Keys? Or
that is in the Keys.
It's on the Dwayne,
it is. Yep. Oh, good call.
So taking it back to the Keys, Key Largo is known for being like one of the wreck capitals because there's so many different wreck dives there. Tell us a little bit about some of the more famous wrecks or the ones that you like that stand out for you while I pull up one of your cool photos.
There is not a bad wreck in the Keys. I've been on the small ones that have been disintegrated. Like I mentioned, the city of Washington before. the Benwood, Spiegel Grove. Obviously, everybody knows the Spiegel Grove, the big carrier assistance one. It's just fantastic. But one of my favorites is the Duane, the USS Duane, which is a Coast Guard cutter. And it actually has a sister ship, the USS Bibb. The Bibb isn't so good. It's still awesome, but it lays on its side, so its superstructure is kind of deeper for recreational divers. But the Duane is fantastic. It sits upright. It's got the big crow's nest coming up, and it's a very identifiable structure, as Dalton mentioned, as you can see here. And I've done the Duane a lot, and I've never had an experience like I did with this when I had this guy come and visit me for over 30 minutes. He followed me around and was in love with his picture, his own image in the dome port.
So we're looking at a picture that Henry took while diving the Duane. Is that right, Henry?
That is correct.
So he was diving on the USS Duane in the Keys, and this cool turtle just came to hang out with him and do the dive with him, and he captured this great shot. So
yeah,
just to give our listeners
he followed
context.
me around. It's a hawksbill turtle, and he's just beautiful. And he stayed up. He was eating a sponge that was growing off of the crow's nest there. And I thought, oh, look, I'll go over and check him out. And when I did, he came over to me and just started swimming around me and looking at himself and his own image in my dome port. And I was just able to capture some really cool shots. And this is kind of early on in me owning the camera. I was still, struggling. You can see that my sunburst up there is not the best, but I was doing a good job trying to get it. Yeah. So it was really a fantastic dive. And I think he was still there when I went up on the surface interval and came back down. I still got a couple more shots of him there.
He's still waiting for you.
That's
awesome.
Right. He was hanging out. And that's the thing is you see a lot of stuff on the dives in the Keys. Like my favorite of all wrecks in the Keys is the Eagle. And that's down towards the middle Keys, down near Tavernier. And it's only because so many people go to Key Largo and Isla Mirada that they do all those wrecks like the Spiegel Grove and the Duane and the Bibb there. Maybe a lot of locals and people who know the dive scene will head a little further south to Tavernier, go out and do the Eagle and some of the other ones because they're just, it's a calmer dive that's not as crowded as the Spiegel, because you get out on the Spiegel and you've got 10 other dive boats all parked there. And so fortunately now with a lot of the scheduling software, they're trying to get better with what time boats go out there. So there's really only one or two boats on the Spiegel Grove and some of the other ones. So it's getting better, and we're trying to manage that, which I like to see the management of the masses going to see the wrecks.
Yeah, and I know a lot of dive shops down there will only they'll take turns on what mornings they go to the Spiegel Grove. So like ocean divers will go to the Spiegel Grove Monday morning. Rainbow Reef will go Tuesday morning,
right?
And then ocean divers will go Wednesday afternoon, and things like that.
Yeah, and I'll give a shout out to my friends Gary and Brenda at Conch Republic down in Tavernier. Yep. He owns Scubaosity software that does the scheduling for a lot of those dive sites.
Oh, nice.
And it's because of that they're able to make sure that it's not too crowded and you don't go there with 10 and 20 boats on one site. So, it's a big deal to have that. I think the management of that to make sure that the resources stay pristine is important as we move forward. Especially for us photographers who want to get in there as the Spiegel Grove. I mean, will we see the Spiegel Grove disintegrate in our lifetime? I don't know. It seems like it's starting to decline. So we've got to save these resources while we can.
Might be picked up and moved with a couple of hurricanes that come through.
That's true. Yeah. Right.
Yeah. Can't help that. Yeah. Right.
What's your favorite guys' site in the Keys to dive? Does anybody return the question, Simon?
No, it's good. I like it. Dalton, what about you?
Lived down in the Keys and Key Largo for a bit, so I dove a ton down there. And, Molasses Reef is always, if you live in Key Largo, you're going to dive Molasses Reef. It's, a huge stretch of reef, and you get everything from, you can catch a drift dive on the outer wall, which very few people ever go to, which is really nice. There's a lot of wrecks. There's just so many wrecks.
I think
The Benwood is still.
I was about to say. So didn't we do a sunset or night dive on the Benwood with Ethan?
We did do a night dive on the Benwood with Ethan.
Yeah, that was really good. That was spectacular.
So the thing about and each wreck usually has a pretty cool story. So the Benwood is a natural wreck. It's not one that was sank on purpose.
Right.
And
it's beautiful.
It's basically, there were two ships during World War II that were running maneuvers in the dark without lights, which was common because they were worried about German U-boats. And the Benwood and this other boat, I don't remember which one it is right now, but they collided. And then the Benwood wasn't going to make it back, so it ran aground on a reef. And it just, after that, the naval base in Homestead, Air Force Base, Naval Base, one of the two, they started using the Benwood for target practice. Oh. And so they would go out and shoot it up, and you can find, it's been deemed safe, but you can find unexploded ordnance.
Really?
Just off the bow and stuff. Yeah. So it's a lot of fun. It's interesting.
I know it's a beautiful wreck. It's where
it really is.
A lot of times as a dive master, my instructor would take all the new students after leaving Jules for the finish of the confined dive. Benwood would be always one of the first dives that we do because it's just so pretty.
It's pretty. It's shallow. There's so much to see. Even though it's not a large wreck, it's not like the Spiegel Grove that's like 110-foot ship.
Yeah,
you know, it's a smaller ship. But it's just, because it's broken apart, there's so much to see, and you can get inside of it without having to worry about getting lost. You can actually do minor penetration, and it's okay because you can always see an exit.
There's secret parts to it too. I mean, if you, as you know, you can go down the flats off the bow. Some Goliath. That's what I've always found, is that I was, the students I would take out there, they would delight in going down and seeing, a big 300-400 pound Goliath grouper just kind of camping out there, maybe near 300-400 yards from the Benwood.
Yeah.
I love it.
And the macro life is fantastic there too. Like I have one of my favorite pictures of spider crabs are all over the place, and all sorts of critters it's crawling with it. So even if you don't like wrecks, and you just want to stay outside and take pictures of critters, there's tons of them on Benwood.
Very true.
Yeah, I mean, there's something there for everybody, for sure.
Yeah.
There's small critters, there's eels, there's been several times where I've seen stingrays coming through there, turtles.
Yeah.
I think I've got a picture of just about everything next to the Benwood at some point.
Yeah, I mean, I think our first dive down there, Dalton, one of our first dives together since we got certified, we went to the Keys, and I think Dwayne was the first big wreck that we did.
The Dwayne and the Spiegel Grove, we did both of them on that. We did I remember that trip because our buddy Kurt.
Yeah.
Our buddy Kurt went with us, and that was entertaining.
We'll have him on to tell that story, right. So hold it for that. For when he comes on.
So one of the things, we did a night dive with ocean divers, and I want to say it was, I don't remember if it was on a wreck or if it was just on Molasses Reef, but it was really bad seas. It was probably 4-foot seas with the occasional like 6-foot set that would come in. And I remember trying to get on the boat. Getting off the boat's always easy. You just roll off the back or jump off the back, whatever, and just descend. But trying to get back on the boat, I remember that I didn't use the swim ladder because there was a roller coming in, and I basically rode the roller onto the back of the boat.
Wow.
Just beat yourself right on the back.
Just beat myself like a whale. It was just hilarious, but a lot of good dives, and we had a great time on that trip. But yeah, I think the Dwayne was the first one we did.
Yeah, so that was memorable. That was a memorable one as well, but also memorable because the currents can get anywhere in Key Largo can get really strong, and you really have to fight to get yourself up and down that line to the ship, which was super. It's something that's very unique compared to our dives in Indonesia and stuff like that,
Right.
because they tend to be a lot calmer currents. Here, you're like fighting for your life just to not get thrown off the line.
Yeah.
But still, a great. I think the Dwayne was great just because it was an ideal size for getting good photos, not too big.
Right.
Yeah, it's great for photos, and I think what a lot of people don't realize when they're thinking about going down to the Keys, when you get on the Spiegel or any of those wrecks down there that are a little bit further away from the reef, you can get currents that are so strong. I mean, I'm sure all three of us have been in them. I know Todd and I were in one on our first dive where we were hanging on the Spiegel Grove for our safety stop,
Right.
with the rope in our arm, and because you couldn't hold on to it with your hand.
Been there.
It was so strong, and you're basically, so the rope is like this, and you're off horizontal, just basically flapping in the breeze.
Yeah.
And there's other times where you might have no current at the surface, but when you get down to the Spiegel, you've got a ripping current. And there's times where you have cross currents where the current will be going one way on top and another way on the bottom. It's just something you really
dive
have
briefing's
to pay
important.
To. Yes.
Get the report and
always pay attention to your dive briefing.
Dive elevator to hell, get down under the superstructure so you miss the current.
Exactly.
Oh, I love that boat.
It's so much fun. So much fun. And you dove dove with Abernathy recently, didn't you?
I did. We did
Tiger
his
Beach?
shark dive in Tiger Beach. That was fun.
Okay.
I mean, it's right out of here in Riviera Beach. The only bad part of the whole experience was the fact that his air conditioner went down on the very first day. So there was I think 15 of us on that boat, and it was hot, but beautiful. The crossing both directions was calm, and we saw a lot of lemon sharks and tiger sharks. So it was my first experience kind of doing the Tiger Beach scene. I definitely want to go back and do that. That was, I don't want to make that a once in a lifetime. I'm going to do that many times just because those creatures are so beautiful. They're
really
patterns. We do get some here when we dive, on the Bell's, the Bonaire, which is a wreck here in South Florida off of Jupiter Coast. It's where a lot of the shark feeders will go. And we do get a lot of the reefies. We do get a lot of lemons, but occasionally we'll get some really nice tigers too. So,
there's a lemon aggregation that comes down through Florida in February, I believe.
Yeah, and we're now just getting into the grouper aggregation, which is really one of the coolest things about South Florida. If you've never been down to South or never seen a fish the size of a VW bug, come down to South Florida and you'll see about 100 of them all together in front of a boat staring at you.
And they'll grunt at you.
Yeah, they clap their gills, and it just sounds like the timpani drum of a symphony. Yeah, and it gets you right here because if you're getting too close, they'll thump at you, and it's fantastic. And I definitely love shooting the Goliath groupers, the aggregation, because they're playful too. They got I think one of the static shots I have for the headshot for me is with one of the local celebrity Goliaths, a small one. His name is Walter. He's friendly. He'll come right up to you. He'll nuzzle you. He's not scared at all. So, but they're a character. They're definitely worth coming down and doing several dives if you're going to come down and support our economy.
Yep,
there's a picture of Henry and Walter.
Henry
best
selfie,
buds.
Walter selfie.
That's right. He's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And he's probably only like maybe 100 and maybe close to 200 pounds. He's nowhere near the size of the really big ones.
The big ones, yeah.
Well, I think
the other thing.
Go ahead, Todd.
I was going to say the other thing that's been popular recently in South Florida that used to only be a big deal in Hawaii is blackwater diving.
It's about to get to that.
Right. So tell us a little bit about where people go in South Florida who does blackwater diving, and tell us what your experience.
Tell us about blackwater diving in general.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, to be honest, I've only been in one. There's one company I really like, Pura Vida Divers out of Riviera Beach. They do a great blackwater operation, and to be honest, you can beep this out, Todd, but I was scared shitless the first time I was going to go do a blackwater dive.
Yeah, I would be too.
Because it's a different matter altogether when you kind of see in the blue ocean, what's down there, you can kind of see vaguely what's there. But if you're in, 200-300 feet of water and it's completely pitch black, and the only thing, for those of you who don't know blackwater dives, they take you out at night, well after the nautical and the civil light is done. And they throw out a buoy with a big either strobe light or a light on the bottom of it that is in about maybe 30 foot of water. So it's just hanging there. And that's kind of your reference point. And the whole thing is you can stay in that 30 foot column of water looking for, and a lot of times it's juvenile fish that you're looking for, these little juveniles. It could be swordfish, it could be crabs, it could be squid, it could be lots of different things. I've even had people I've been waiting to see is the lionfish. The little lionfish larvae are supposedly very beautiful.
And you get a lot of stuff that come up from the deeper water.
Right, deeper water. And it's just a phenomenal experience. Once you get over, my original apprehension was everything's pitch black. I mean, I've done cave diving and that's pitch black, but this is kind of a pitch black that just goes on and on and on. So you really focus in on that reference light that's hanging on that buoy.
So do they drop you? You're not tethered or anything. They just drop you off and you hang out around.
They drop you like a normal dive, and you drift dive. Drift diving is really big in South Florida. We're going always typically with the I can't think of that currenty thing off the coast. See, again, the blonde takes over for a little bit. But yeah, we're just drifting with the current, and it could be a slow current of only 2 to 3 knots, or it could be higher. But you may drift in that hour-long dive. You may drift maybe 8 miles. So they'll start off by driving the boat 8 miles to the south, so that when the north current is kicking you're drifting right back to basically where you started. And the boat's always with you. You're drifting with the boat. And it really challenges you on a lot of levels because, like I mentioned before, your situational awareness, you need to know in the case of an emergency, how can I either, raise myself or come up if I need to? Where's my dump valves if I need to go lower? What's my buoyancy? How am I doing on my trim and everything? But also, on your housing, how do I know where everything is if I need to change, everything? So you really can't see anything.
Right.
So that was a challenge in itself. And it just being, a blackwater dive, you have to have a lot of light so you can see whatever's in front of you in order to get your camera to focus on whatever it is. Because a lot of these things are, maybe the size of a grain of salt. This particular squid was probably, if it was an inch, I'd be amazed. It was probably maybe a 1/2 inch to 3/4 of an inch long and completely translucent, right? And it's just beautiful. And now it didn't light up like that. That's actually my flash reflecting off of the colors, but it's just, it almost looks like a toy, like a dog would carry, right?
Right.
Yeah,
It's just amazing.
Yeah,
So-
I've seen some of your blackwater stuff, and it's really cool. And I just can't. There's so many things that you have to think about when you're talking about a blackwater dive because there is no point of reference. People talk about diving in blue water where you really have no reference but up, because you can see daylight. But at night, you're taking away that daylight. So you think about your normal night dive. People can shine your light on the reef, and you're looking at cool stuff. But on a blackwater dive, it doesn't matter where you shine your light; you're not seeing anything.
And
except for whatever's in front of you. Yeah.
It's a total challenge because you could look, and you're focused as a photographer. You all know you've squirreled and gone in different directions just to find whatever it is you're trying to track. And the next thing I do, I look up and I'm like, where's that ball? And I may be at 60 feet instead of 30 feet, or I may be at 10 feet instead of 30 feet. So it challenges all aspects of your dive training.
And you got to pay attention to
pay attention.
Your depth as well. You got to keep
absolutely
on your depth and your air
and your everything.
And everything.
So it's important to have a lot of light so that you can illuminate the whole the area that you're in, because these things are so small, and a lot of times they're just pulsing in front of you, or they don't stop like some of the fish on the reef will. These things are constantly in motion, and I wish I had a picture of me out of the water, doing how fast I have to move the camera sometimes just to follow them.
Yeah, I was just about to say, you know, the luxury you usually have when you're shooting macro is usually out close to, let's say, a sea floor or something, and shooting something that's usually pretty stationary. And that small sliver of focus that you have to get in macro is a challenge, but not so much because it's once you lock it in, you're pretty close. And you can use your back button focus and then slowly move backwards and forwards. But now in black water, like, it's a free for all, right? And so you just have to hope to catch focus and maybe have it in servo mode. I don't know. What did you do? How did you handle
just
focusing?
Back focus and basically trying to stay with them in the column of water? One of the early things I did is I learned how to shoot manual. A lot of times when I first started, it was, programming the auto exposure, program the ISO, whatever it may be. I think, Dalton, you had actually worked with me on setting the range of my ISO so that, I could let that fly free and work with whatever I was working with, but it would stay within a confined range of ISO settings. So that helped in a lot of ways too. But it is extremely difficult. I have yet to master it. It is still on my great list to just keep practicing and get better at it. I see a lot of the shots that the people come back with off of the boat, and I'm like, ooh, I'd like to get the mini swordfish, and I'd like to get, they have a lot of juvenile seahorses as well, which is just I would love to see.
That's cool.
They float.
Awesome.
Evidently, they're floating on the sargassum, and that's one thing I've never even seen. I guess I'm not that shallow. I need to go up and see where the sargassum is floating in the column. I'm usually hovering down around maybe 20, 25 feet.
Are you using scientific terms like sargassum?
Yeah, well, isn't that?
I thought that was something.
On the antlers. We're doing antlers and sargassum.
Sorry, that one I know.
I thought that's what happens when you get really happy in the water.
Sorry, on the floaty seaweed stuff.
There we go. Thank you. Got to keep it consistent on this podcast.
Okay, perfect. But I can't say highly enough about black water diving. I just, there needs to be more time in the day and in the year just to be able to do it.
Can you do it year round? I would assume you could, or is it typically?
You can. The water temperature obviously is going to get really cold, but I think one of the biggest things that scares people is just the fact that it's black, it's dark.
Of course,
Night dive with nothing really to see, and you're just floating in black water. That really unnerves people.
And you don't tether to the buoy or anything. Nope. You just float.
No
free.
tether. You're just swimming free, and your reference point is that big, large, shiny globe on the bottom of that buoy.
Now, did they light the strobes on the bottom of the boat too, or
no? They don't. Basically, they want to give you a pristine canvas with which to work. So really, you have that reference point that's sitting, and a couple of times they do have some strobes going up the line, so you can see the vertical aspect of the line, but they tell you beforehand the depth of the ball will be 30 feet, so make your reference point where you are in that, and then your job is, and I've seen people kind of get really far away and then have to come back, and it's another challenge with your dive buddy because you're both kind of trying to stay together, and you're really only seeing flashes at some point. Everybody has the glow stick on their tank, so you can see a little bit of that. But some days the visibility is not great, and you can't even see that. You're waiting to see where the flash is and find them. So
sounds so cool.
That sounds like a lot of fun, and it sounds really intense.
It is, because some of the things that people don't realize, you're going out on the boat at night, which a lot of people do for night dives anyways, but you get out there and it's just black. And one time in particular, we were sitting on the boat in between the surface interval, and the full moon came up on the surface. And I was just like, it reminded me of, what's that Tom Hanks movie where he's on the
Castaway?
Castaway. No, not Castaway. It's the other one.
Joe versus the volcano.
Joe versus the volcano. Yes. Where the moon comes out, and I was like, oh man, this is just like Joe versus the volcano.
Back when Tom Hanks
was amazing.
Still did comedies.
Right. And then we got back in the water, and it was weird because you could see then that moon also coming up in reference underwater. It's every experience I've had blackwater diving has been fantastic. So, it's reminding me that they're kicking off a whole new season on Pura Vida. So I'm going to sign up.
Now, are they taking you out like past the drop off where you're in like 600 or 1,000 feet of water?
Yeah.
Or
we are in Total deep water there. It's at least 400 foot. It's a good 20-minute. It's 20 minutes out, and then they go south so that you can travel north with the current.
Right.
Yeah.
Very cool. Now, you had mentioned earlier that you need a lot of light. So did you use your standard focus light, or did you have to do anything additional to your normal setup to when you were doing this?
I set up both of my focus lights, and I also have 2 solar lights that I would use for like night dives in general. I mounted them on there. So I had actually the focus lights on my camera weren't too bright. They're just meant to kind of focus little things. But the more light that you can pour at it, I know a lot of the blackwater divers who do it like all the time, they actually have the video lights out there to just blast, because it's really what you can see. Right. And lately with me getting a little bit older, my eyes are kind of not as good as close up. Yeah. So I've looked at getting, the bifocals inside my mask because I can't see through the camera as well when you're trying to quickly focus and everything. Right. I was relying a lot on the camera itself and not my eyes.
So you're dumping a lot of light, where when we do night dives on the reef, we'll use just like a single red focus light because we don't want to scare off anything.
Exactly.
When we're doing blackwater, you're just like using all white light, as much of it as you can get so you can see things.
Right.
Is that right?
And the difference is when you're on the reef, you want to be respectful of everybody else. Everybody's kind of congregated across the reef, and the water's typically so clear that you can see if there's a lot of light somewhere. For some reason with the blackwater dives, that light just dissipates off so quickly, that you could have a ton of light, and then somebody maybe 20 feet to the right of you could still have that light, and they're not going to interfere with your shot. It's just the way it works. I don't know. I'm sure some physics person out there or, light magician could tell me how that works, but you can have a ton of light and not really disturb anybody else like you would on a reef.
Yeah, I think Dalton's trying to demonstrate that right now.
Wow, he's blackwater diving. Look at
he's not that far away yet. We can't even see him when we have all this light.
I wish I was blackwater diving right now.
He's trying to get we're trying to get the
jealous if I were.
Yes.
Now, did they not have blackwater diving where you guys are in California?
You go blackwater diving during the day in California.
It's not, from what I've seen, it's not really a thing here yet. I would imagine it could be, but just because the conditions, it's cold, a lot bigger waves and stuff around here. But I'm sure some people will. I'm sure there's some niches of people probably doing it, but it's not really a popular thing here.
I really love that the podcast you guys had that the guy was talking about the church in the kelp garden. That was so cool.
Well, I think Todd's jonesing now. His thing throughout his whole life has been mola, and now that he knows that we can get mola pretty regular up in
Northern California,
Monterey, up in Monterey, that he's
big ones.
Schools of them.
Really? Yeah, they have a lot of the little ones, and so the little ones the sea lions like to play with them. If you listen to Patrick's podcast, he talks about it, I think, or maybe it was John, I forget, but I think they both did. Anyways, they get both big and the small ones, but the small ones, there's a ton of them, and it was John who talked about they have like a mola graveyard because so many of them just get batted around by the sea lions as playthings that there's tons of them on the ocean floor that just couldn't survive it. But it's still really cool.
I was hoping to see. I was hoping to see one of those in Indonesia because they have them there.
Me too.
I was never lucky enough. They to me, that seems like, it's almost like a Pinocchio toy. Like there's a clockwork inside. It's a bunch of bones. They just look like the oddest, coolest thing.
They do, for sure.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough to see a lot of the bigger pelagics, but not a mola. So
yeah,
we'll come out to California and we'll run up to Monterey and see Pat.
Sweet.
Yeah, we'll have to do that for sure.
Got to bring my cold water gear.
I know. Yeah, we'll have to get our dry suits going. Something.
Yeah, absolutely.
So one of the. Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead, Todd. No, Todd, go.
Okay, so one of the things dives that we actually, and it's not really a dive, but one of the trips we actually took all together was, and went underwater, was to go look at whale sharks in the East Lamoilleres. And just a couple of years ago, but right around this time of year.
Todd's always getting inside my head. That's what happens when the three of us get together. Like, we're all on the same page.
Yeah.
Talk about a workout, man. I have never worked harder in any dive or any place than we did on those few days in Isla Mujeres.
Yeah, it was. You definitely got to show off your swimming skills.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, it's all those fins. I blame it on the Scuba Pro jet fins that I have. They may be clunky and heavy, but man, you can kick the crap out of the water.
So we rented out, courtesy Dalton did a lot of the research, and basically we had a small group of us together, and we rented out a private charter to go out a couple of days to snorkel with the whale sharks in the Isla Mujeres in Mexico. And it was a lot of fun, but because we had the boats to ourselves, so actually, Henry, why don't you kind of walk people through what the procedure is like on how you go out diving and snorkeling? Because it's rather unique.
Well, yeah, it's unique. I mean, Isla Mujeres is it's a small island off of the peninsula in Mexico. It has a lot of resorts. It's a cool little town. I don't know that we got to spend as much time seeing the town as we did going diving, but the government really regulates how the diving for the whale sharks goes. You can't scuba dive. It is only snorkeling, and you can only have, I think it was 2 people in the water at any one time. The caveat to that is I don't know that they regulate how many boats can actually be out there at one time. So you'll probably have 30 boats with 2 people in each, which is 60 people in the water. And in some cases it's sad. And others, I know on some days we saw a lot of whale sharks, which was wonderful because then the boats were sporadic and spaced out. But on other days when it wasn't, they didn't find the big mass of whale sharks, or they were deep or something, it was, a lot of boats around a couple of sharks. So that, we were trying to be very conscious to not overwhelm them. I know, you say not to touch any of the sea life, but it doesn't mean they can't touch you. And I know that one of the things that happened that was funny, that I was sitting there trying to get a shot, and I got dropped perfect. The boats are really good. They'll run up and they'll do a quick turn and kind of put you right in front of a path of this without disturbing or making them change the path of the whale shark. So it's a big choreography dance that they do with these boats, and they're very respectful to, not hit other boats and not, get too close to these whale sharks. But they'll drop you in, and then they'll come in, and then you've got to kick like the devil to stay up with this massive beast that is, in some cases 30, 35 foot long, and just the most beautiful thing. And you want to try to position yourself in front of them so you can get that awe-inspiring mouth shot and everything, and maybe get some reflection off of the surface, because, there's tons of things you can do with that. But I remember one time I was trying to reposition myself, and the whale shark did not move. So he basically ran into me, and I thought, and I don't know, tell me if I'm wrong, guys, I thought he actually nudged me, and I almost flew out of the water when that happened. So
I think that happened to me, you, and Todd at some point, because
body check.
When you get it's funny, you get body checked by these things, and they're so massive, and I'm a big dude, but I get body checked by this, and I feel like I'm rolling down the side of an airplane or something.
It's
because you're tumbling.
Massive they are.
You're tumbling in the water with very little control, and kind of like rolling down the side of this thing, and it's crazy.
I thought they would have been more fragile, right? Didn't you? When he hit me the first time, I'm like, damn, that's like a bus.
Yeah. No, on the flip side, we have no business, like, we should all get knocked out cold if we got hit by one of their fins.
Right.
But it's funny. They seem to have a lot more spatial awareness than we do when we're underwater, and tend to actually ensure that they don't completely kill you even if they nudge you. It's not usually with their full force. And
absolutely.
It's a lot for us, but like, man, I can't even think what would happen if we just got whacked by a tail.
There were times where, it, like Henry said, you're getting right in front of it, trying to get this big, nice, awesome wide angle shot. and then they come right next to you.
Yeah.
And they're swimming their tail. That's how they move. They're swimming. But when their tail gets close to you, it's like they just easily avoid you.
Exactly. Yeah.
You
Seem to slow down.
They're like, I could smack the heck out of you right now.
Yeah, exactly.
And when you're looking at them from the boat, even moving through the water, you're like, yeah, they're not moving that fast. And then you get in the water and you're like, holy crap, are they moving?
Yeah. They're deceiving how big they are.
It's because they're so big, right?
How
big they are.
Yeah. Overall, I mean, that trip was really a highlight of all the places. I mean, liveaboards that I've been on and staying at resorts. I mean, the hotel we were at was really nice, but the dive operations, they couldn't have been nicer. Driving the golf cart, maybe a little bit inebriated. That was fun.
Well, I also
karaoke. Now that was the highlight.
Singing karaoke on some bar swings.
Yeah.
Right.
I think probably. I mean, that's definitely one of the highlight trips of all the ones I've been on as well. But I think a lot of that has to do doing something that we all enjoy, but doing it together. It definitely has to do with the company you keep.
Absolutely. And one of the things I realized that I wish I'd known ahead of time, and I'll tell this for everybody out there now, it's a very, very, very long boat ride to go out and a very, very long boat ride to come back. And sometimes it's a little choppy. So make sure you pee before you go and pee before you get back in the boat, because it's a long trip back.
And make sure you don't have to do number 2.
Exactly. Right. Oh my God, that trip was so long, but it was fun.
When we came back though, and we stopped by the beach on that one side, some of the best ceviche I've had in a while. They prepared fresh ceviche on the boat for us, and took one of the boat cushions and put it in the water so it'd float. Yeah.
Right.
And then put the ceviche and chips on top of that float. So we're just floating in the water, eating and drinking and having a good old time.
Overall, fantastic trip. With fantastic people. So
absolutely. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. I think we need to do it again next.
As soon as we can get allowed out of the house, we should do that.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Well, hey guys, I think that's a good place to stop part 1 of our interview. But before we let you go, Henry, we're going to start a new segment here that I've titled The Dive Brief. And we're going to ask you some 5 rapid fire questions, and we just want some quick responses, whatever comes to mind. Think Rorschach test.
You do know I'm blonde, right?
Yeah, exactly.
That's why you're our guinea pig.
That's exactly right. All right. So let's see how this goes. Henry, your favorite dive snack is?
Dive snack? Ooh, pineapple. Pineapple between dives, fantastic.
Right on.
Gets rid of the salt, and it's chilled.
All right. Awesome. Okay, Henry, what is your favorite piece of dive gear?
Oh, rapid fire. God, it's got to be just the housing. I never really want to go anywhere without it. The camera and the housing.
Okay. All right. Right on.
If you could choose somewhere to dive that you haven't been yet.
I think I would like to go where you guys went, which the continental plates. I would like to experience that in Iceland, right?
Iceland. Yeah, that's tough. A close second
would be Hawaii, because I know that's very touristy, but the mantas and the turtles are supposed to be really nice as well.
Big island.
Yeah, so.
All right. This one should be a good one for you. What is your favorite post-dive beverage?
Oh, a good IPA is nothing can go wrong with that. It's in a can. I can bring it. I don't have to worry about glass on the deck, and you just keep it on ice in a bag, and then you pop it right after, because the salt in your mouth gets washed out just as easily. So.
Right on.
Awesome. What is your favorite sea animal?
Oh, that's easily either manatee or the Goliath groupers, because of their personality.
Okay, awesome. And we're going to wrap it up with, what is the most frustrating thing about diving for you? Change it up a little bit.
People without respect for the ocean and without respect for the dive boat in general. I mean, rude divers, really. That's the biggest drawback.
I think we all can agree on that.
Yeah. Don't be a dive, kids.
Exactly. I like that. I think I'm going to use that as a new descriptor now.
Don't be Soul Kids. I think that should be the name of today's
Don't
episode.
Be a asshole.
Don't be a asshole. Absolutely.
Well, Henry, you survived the very
thank you
first
so much
dive.
for having me.
Good job. Thank you so much for, we got so many more things to talk about. We'll definitely have to have you back when you're free next. But this was a great chat. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, guys, really much. Thank you.
Make him our Florida correspondent.
Exactly.
Yeah, we'll probably get out there to California. We've got a leftover ticket. We weren't able to reimburse from our trip to Indonesia, so we've got a first class ticket on United that can take us to LAX. So,
we'll do an in-person episode when you come visit.
Awesome, I'd love it
for sure. And Bud, great pictures, great photos today. Big fan of all of them. I really like that orange sherbet nudie.
Yeah, the nudie.
Isn't that cool? It's one of my favorites.
That is just stunning. Like I said, the texture, the color, and the thing about that, just to backtrack toward that one that we had at the beginning, is you don't think you would be able to get gesture out of a nudibranch,
right?
But you can, obviously.
But the antlers are basically eyes, and you're shooting for eyes, right?
That's right.
Yes. Yeah, but you did a
But it has a dress. The edges of it is like a dress.
Right?
It's like
oh my God, it's
just absolutely. But you did a
floppy
fantastic job.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing those. Wonderful
Thanks
photos.
for sharing everything.
Yeah,
the whale shark at the end, we really didn't talk too much about, but that was fantastic as well. You got some.
Maybe the next time we can do a
and stuff
completely on whale sharks or something. That'd be a fun talk.
Yeah,
there's a lot to talk about there.
Exactly.
For sure.
So before we go, Henry, why don't you tell people where they can find more of your work?
Well, I'm on Facebook and Twitter, both as Hank's Place. That's HANXPLACE. And I'm also got Photo Namaste on Facebook that has a lot of collections of some of the shots I've done over the years. So check those out. Thanks.
Cool. Well, thanks for joining us, Henry. Have a great weekend and a happy holiday, and hopefully we get to do another follow-up episode in the near future.
I look forward to it. Thanks, guys.
See you, bud.
Bye, guys.